Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and I guess good night, depending on where you are. Welcome to Working Out Loud. This is Dave Darrington, and I'm coming to you live. We are live today, so it's great. Um, so again, welcome. This is we're joined today by April Trask, who is Senior Director of Partner Enablement at Cloudinary. Welcome, April.
Hi,
Um,
thanks for having me.
I am really thankful for having you on because today, like we have talked about in previous weeks, we are continuing our story about partner enablement. And last week, Bill Cushard and I had a little bit of a talk about how do you work with partners? How do we develop a partner program? What's important about it? And we went we barely scraped the surface.
It was a good session. I just listened to it recently. I mean, it was a full hour, so I feel like it was more than scraping the surface, but it was a good overview, I think.
Well, good.
Great.
But because so many people have asked about this, and you and I talked, gosh, it was January now, the months fly by. I really wanted to go further. And let me go into what we talked about last week. So here's the frame up. So last week we were talking with Bill, and what we experienced so far is that, let's say, and again, for this audience, these are the people that we're generally working with at Service Rocket and with customer education. We're in that curve of a company that's starting out. It's a startup. It's in tech, maybe not. And you're growing a product base and you're growing it really quick. So you're taking capital, you're growing your company. And at some point, we get education, right? We may have various enablement teams appear over that curve to start helping everybody understand how to use the product. And then something I've always experienced is there's this point where you have just too much to do. And
Does that point ever end?
no.
There's this point, and what I mean, because I feel like you could make that. Well, I know what you're trying to say, but you can make the argument for that point anywhere. I feel like.
Carry it forward because you can take it. You know what I'm talking about. There's a point where maybe it's better put this way. There's a point where you have too much to do, but somebody is willing to help, and they're not your temp company. And that's when you say, okay, there's an entity over here, there's a group of partners, they're going to help us out, they're going to be like us, they're going to help us expand to the world. But how do we get that program started? What are the things that we do? How do we make it a good thing? So that's where I wanted to start today, just the frame up. And today, April, why don't we go into your background and then come at this whole problem from a different angle?
Sure, happy to help. if I can, we'll see.
You will help, I know. All right, so you've got a really interesting background, I have to say. I like your academic background. Why don't you take the stage and tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today? Because you and I kind of met around some customer education stuff, and now you're off into a new adventure. Why don't you fill in the blanks for us? We'd love to hear about you.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. My background is unique. I think a lot of people that end up in education certainly do have unique backgrounds. I think it's a field in SaaS where a lot of folks come from, say, the CSM route, or they come from the straight instructional design route, or from a variety of different areas. Some of them come from K-12 teaching, all kinds of different backgrounds. I think you're going to see a little bit less of the academia background in there. So I would say that makes me a little bit unique. So my background was originally, I went into academia. So what that means is not K-12, that means university or college instruction, or being a scholar or doing research. So after my undergrad, I actually got my PhD in history, in European history. But during the process of that, I was really fascinated by learning, right? How do we actually impart information, and how do people process it? And then how do we think about learning as an actual research discipline, given that I was in sort of a research field. So I think if you were to look at the thread through my career all the way to where I am at Cloudinary, you're going to see this real focus from me on what does the research tell us about how people learn, how they retain information, how they move things from short-term to long-term memory, and how they actually use that to enact change. So that was something that became sort of a thread through my career. I don't know how much more I can dig a little bit more into kind of how I moved from academia to SaaS, if that's helpful. But
well, I think that's actually, I wanted to start there. I wanted to, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good place to pause because I think this is really fascinating, April, that you're not, I mean, you are unique in that your background, you got a PhD in history. I'm like, wow, history. And now we're in SaaS, but it's not
Yeah.
so rare. And I love that story because you're coming into this discipline and like, did you find your inner teacher or your inner enabler, I guess you, at some point along that way?
Yeah, I
How
mean, I
funny.
think, to be honest, I don't know if it's so much the inner teacher as much as, you know, people have certain qualities that attract them to helping other people, right? So for me, I love helping people. I like feeling useful in that way. I like the diversity of how people learn. I mean, one of the things that just really, when I was in the classroom, I taught at Amherst College right before I came to San Francisco and went to Dropbox. And when I was there, the students, if any of them ever see this, they're just phenomenal. But each person in that room has a different motivation, has a different background, has a different context, has a different way in which they're engaging with what you're saying. And
Mhm.
that to me is fascinating, is you get in a room and you figure out, how do I speak to all these people and how do I modulate my message throughout the context of the moment that I'm with that person?
Yes.
So that
And that,
translates directly into customer education and partner enablement, because that's where you need to focus, is why does it matter to the person? Why do they care about what you're saying? And how does that connect with something in them that makes them want to care?
which if we go ahead and frame it up a little bit more, is our whole problem in software education, where, okay, I'll give you an example. I'm asked by my manager to learn a new product, right? And I go, okay, great. Now I've got all these other things to do. I have to learn yet
Yes.
another product. But
Mm-hmm.
you are the sympathetic one. And let's put it in the context of me as a partner. Like, well, maybe we'll step into it this way, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
think this is an interesting discussion. So let's say, hey, April, I'm willing to do work for you. I'm your partner, but now and I've seen this from that's your side too. I'm kind of part of your culture, but I'm kind of not. I'm coming in from the outside. I have a vested interest to learn the product that you have better than anybody, right? Better than anybody I can,
Mm-hmm.
because I have to support them and I have to represent as you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really frustrating. And like teaching that kind of, like, we have those different personas. That's the partner persona that we're talking about. But you could have the
Yeah.
end user partner persona. You could have the end user who's an executive partner persona. And they're
Yes.
all different,
Right. Yeah.
but you're finding how to tug at their heartstrings and say, okay, Dave, calm down. We got this. We're going to take you through this program, and here's the structure for you to learn that compels me. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I think there's two things for me that come up from that. First, just to get a little bit about myself, and I'm going to say something that's probably a little controversial, so I don't know who's
Yeah.
actually watching this. So I have a couple of folks that I can imagine, if they're watching this, are going to be like, April, no. Um, but, oh, wait, did you just?
Yeah, I just changed the screen to give
Oh,
you a stage.
right. I'm
We do
like,
those kind of things.
what happened?
You're like, where'd Dave go? I'm right here.
Yeah, I was like, it's okay. I could just run the rest of this somehow. Um, my tenure obviously in tech is not as long as other people, so again, take that with a grain of salt. But when I first came in, I came into customer education, and that more generally, right, sort of onboarding customer education. And then when I went to Slack, where I was at for over 2 years, I really moved into the certification education field. And one thing that I loved, and one of the reasons I was attracted to moving straight into a sort of partner specific area, is just the reputation that partner enablement has for being the worst.
Oh,
Has
really?
being the most challenging, always the difficult thing that
Okay.
nobody wants to deal with. And whenever you hear people in customer education who've inherited partners or have to deal with partners, or suddenly, someone is saying you need to enable partners, I mean, it's never like, yay. it's at least as far as I hear it, it's usually very like, oh no, this is going to be like a difficult thing that we're going to have to sort of manage. And again, that could be just the context of what I've heard. But for me, I think what I like about the partner space is the audience is so incredibly diverse, even compared to customers,
Yeah.
that I find it to be more challenging personally, in terms of the difference of motivations across all these partners. I think the other thing that kind of like you brought up from that is this focus on, just like in customer education or in any enablement field, we have that learner focus, right? You need to be empathetic
Yes.
to the learner. You approach your education from the point of view of the learner. I think for partners, that takes even more of an important role, because you need to realize that the partner's business is not your business, right? So your motivations are not your partner's motivations. And additionally, your partner, or the partners, is kind of the ecosystem of partners you have, what they're selling is expertise, right? They're not selling the ability for them to use your product. You're selling the ability for them to understand your product, integrate it into their go-to-market strategy and their suite of tech stack that they specialize in, which is going to be unique for each partner. Does that make sense?
That really makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
the more that I learn about this, I like how you framed that up. Like you're saying, okay, we've got a diversity of different kinds of partners, and you're coming at this from a different layer, saying, I like how you say they're selling expertise, because
I mean,
that's
in all
so,
contexts, right?
yeah.
Every time, that's what their value is, that they're trading. They're not trading the ability to do something, which is kind of where we're pushing with customers, is the ability to actually improve their behaviors.
So a module that a customer would take, which is like the one, or like, let's say it's an integration module. I can take Salesforce and click this button and do this thing and add this thing in, and it happens. Now me as a person can do that. But a partner, you have like another order of complexity superimposed on that, where
Yeah.
you're really, okay, I'm going to say the phrase, train the trainer, the dreaded train the trainer phase, which is appropriate. We know what it means. But to anybody else, it could mean a complexity, like all kinds of different stuff. We're trying to build the foundation for you to be able to be that person. Actually, it's not just train the trainer, it's train the expert, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think you guys said it well last week. The big thing is that these people are representing your brand. So customers, they don't represent your brand. So the way
Yeah.
that they conceive or conceptualize your product doesn't need to be structured by us. We can try to structure it in the sense that we want them to understand the product and how it's going to drive value for them, especially if there's something like an admin or a developer. But it's not to that same level where they need to be able to speak to that as a representative of your brand, which I think is very challenging, because they're representing their brand and your brand at the same time. And these things will be very different.
Sometimes, but that's really complex. So, all right. So defining the problem space that we're coming at it from we're coming at it from the working out loud. The problem we have to solve is, let me back up, because I really, really like, as an educator, how you framed this up, because I think that's unique. Now I'm a partner coming in. I not only am Dave Darrington Inc., which is, we're a partner brand that we help your brand at Cloudinary or whatever, whatever brand. So now I have to come in and go, okay, now maybe it'll help. I'm going to put myself in the role of a partner as I remembered them when I was working through a startup twice, 3 times, where they would come to me and go, Dave, I'm really struggling. I don't know how to learn X. And I go, oh, okay, great. I give them product training. But then I think what you're saying is that structure that I would get, like, I'm coming at it from a customer education person. I'm coming at this from, I've got partners to enable. I have this content. Now I have to push my program in a different kind of way, so that I'm basically training my professional services team external to me, kind of. Is that making sense?
Yes, except your professional service team doesn't have to do go-to-market strategy, right? So it's even harder, right? So that's what I like about that's what I like about partners, is that when you look at what you need to enable them on, it has to be this interwoven quilt and I think you guys talked about this last week, right? Like
Yeah.
you have straight up product training. And if you're in a startup, like for example, I am, and I have limited resources, that straight up product training, I can leverage what customer education might bring to the table. And that's what I'm currently
Yeah.
doing, right? If we think about just straight up how to use our product, which is what customer education excels at. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a difficult field. That's an incredibly difficult field, but we can leverage it. And then at the same time, then you have that component of sales, straight up sales enablement, right? So, and this again
Layers.
depends on the partner, right? There are some technology partners who don't have that kind of go-to-market motion around actually selling inbound or outbound or as part of projects. So that piece might be a little bit missing for some partners, but in general, sales enablement. And then we have that kind of technical piece that you guys were mentioning last week around how do you take our product and integrate it, right? So if you're going to be an OEM partner, or you're going to have a certain kind of specific tech stack that these things integrate together. And then you need to think about how to do that technically, and then also how to have a go-to-market motion around it. And then additionally, it's,
Wait, there's more.
It's more, right? So it's both, it's the kind of sales enablement, and then you take it even higher to think a little bit more like business strategy, right? Where does this fit more broadly in the market? How do we position our expertise as being cutting edge that's going to allow us to differentiate ourselves in our particular market? So it's even higher than what you would get typically as like an AE sales enablement.
Wow. Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's sort of a piece of all of these mixed together.
Well, and I like this a lot. This is helpful for everybody because you're starting to paint a picture of a partner is not just one thing. There are flavors and nuances, and it's almost like, April, what I've been trying to understand by talking with experts like you and others is how all of these different education tendrils all, like you said, kind of come together as this big quilt. And the reason that I said, let's talk about partner enablement twice is because that's come up for me in every role I've ever had. And it's always a mystery because
right. It's the thing I'm saying. Were you really excited when you inherited partner enablement?
Yeah. Well, I did. I'm like, I didn't. I remember, let's scroll back like 5 years or so. I was at Gainsight, and we had partners coming in. Well, the first group of people that I was helping to enable were our own people, particularly like the technical professional services people. So that's kind of a natural fit. And they would come to me and go, Dave, we don't have anything to learn from. Great. That's why we built our product training for customer education. Like you said, customer education kind of wedges in there in that product space to say, here's not just how the product works. This is how it really works together, how we put these workflows together. And it comes at it largely from that end user admin. It could be many personas, but it's typically not that partner persona yet, because enablement teams have to come in and start doing their thing and building a stack of not just tools, but understanding of those tools and how to sell. And like you're saying, I really like how you built it layer after layer after layer. Now you've got strategy that's outside of all of that a partner needs to know. And maybe now they start to striate or stratify too, because wouldn't you say, like, but what kind of partners are there then? So they're like implementation partners, there's general training partners, there's all kinds of different cohorts then within that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I think you guys did a good job last week of sort of laying out some of the different types of partners. And again, I'm also going to preface this that, with my expertise in the partner space, there's people who are far more experts than me. So it's a little grain of salt there. Yeah. But the way that, you can think about partners is you've got multiple types of segmentations for that.
Yeah.
So you have the segmentation around the business type of the partner. So that means that a partner could be an agency. They could be like a design house. They could be focusing on marketing folks. They could be a systems integrator, right? Which is what you're probably most familiar with. I think a lot of companies have systems integrators as partners. They could be a distributor, a peer distributor or peer reseller. They could be, different types of the business itself. And then additionally, you have another segmentation for how you're engaging with those partners as your company. So for example, you might have referral partners. but a referral partner within that segment might have 5 different types of business types within it. There might even be ISVs that are referral partners for you, right? So you need to think about all these different segmentations. And then of course, within that, you have the typical segmentations that you would do for customer education around persona. But you have to think more broadly about the business type persona first.
That's okay. Now, April, I want to talk to you about going even deeper yet, because
we'll see. see if I can help you with that.
I know you can, because you got this. Can we just take a moment then? Like, I want to go back in time for you a little bit. I really think it's neat, because I've had conversations with a few people, and I remember the last place I worked, I got to see the genesis of a partner program. Started with one person, and then they hired a couple, and it was kind of neat, but I was busy too, and never really got to ask the questions, right? The question that first comes up to me is, okay, let's go back to the April that said, hey, there's this partner opportunity, and that's really exciting to me. You're a person of, I think, a lot of, like, okay, my boss, manager at Outreach, she had a saying of dirty jobs, and she didn't mean that to contextualize that as a negative. She said, there's always an opportunity for dirty jobs to be done, and they're the jobs that end up evolving into something interesting and amazing, and they push your career, right? And those of us in startups, like that's why I ended up in customer education, because I saw this opportunity to really enable and empower people. And it was exciting to me, because I'm an educator, and I also love technology and SaaS. So here's you looking at this precipice of, wow, okay, there's all this stuff to do. How in the heck you even start building a program that's going to start from that one partner lens? And then, like April, really, this is blowing my mind, because there's so much to think about now, because you got this partner, that kind of partner, this kind of partner. How do I show that they're performing? Do I need an LMS for my partners? Do I need a CMS for my part? Wow. Okay. I'm just gonna like open the door, and maybe it'd be fun just for you to riff a little bit and talk about your experiences, how you got into that, started building.
Sure. So
that's too much. Sorry. It's too early for that.
I mean, I don't know. Like I can start talking about some things, and
let's just ramble a little bit, because I'm curious to see how your mind works. And like you said, I want to build this program.
Yes. So I am energized most, and I thrive most in environments where there's sort of chaos. And you sort of put me in the middle of that chaos. And to me, it's very exciting, because I can think about, how do all these whirling colors around me, how could I grab threads and figure out how to piece something together, and actually have really demonstrated impact? That to me, I really enjoy in terms of the growth of a company. So with Cloudinary, for example, there was a partner program. And really, if you think about the amount of enterprise revenue that the partners were generating, as well as sort of brand awareness and go to market, especially on the technology side, there was a really vibrant program, but there wasn't any partner enablement or any focus on the partner experience.
Okay.
So I think two of the things, and I'm going to take a little detour here, that I wanted to mention, two of the things that I think are difficult about partner enablement that you don't necessarily face as clearly or directly in customer education is, oh shoot, wait 1 minute. I see that. I had both of them there. One of them would be that the stakeholders that you're engaging with, you have your usual set of stakeholders that all have different sort of investments in what you're doing. So in customer education, some of the, I'm not going to use the word difficult, but some of the more productive relationships that you have with stakeholders are around with marketing, for example, because marketing very often wants to have their marketing messaging reflected in your learning, even if that doesn't necessarily translate. So you do have that tension, not tension, but productive conversation with marketing. And then for me in SaaS, you're also working with technical teams, developers, because you need to translate that content for customers. And so of course, there's a different way of thinking and a way of approaching the topic that you get from developers. I think what makes partners, as another layer to that, is that your stakeholders are suddenly people who have quotas. So your work, your program directly impacts someone's salary. It basically directly impacts somebody's ability to earn and be successful at their job, which to me is different from customer education. You don't have someone coming to you and saying, I have these 10 partners. I really would like to have a specialized engagement with them, X, Y, and Z. And because you know that's impacting their ability to create that positive relationship with that partner.
Right.
So that's sort of a different piece of this. So when you come in, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry
we'll
to interrupt.
We'll get back to the startup piece.
Yeah, keep the thread, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask because this term of revenue enablement keeps coming up too. But that's inside. So it's your ability, the helping somebody's ability to do their job and sell is a little bit different, a little bit nuanced as opposed to that internal lens where we're making sure our own team is enabled appropriately to help sell the product, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it's like, it's almost the same thing, but now it's like extrinsic. Like it's out there in the world that you're trying to help somebody. So that's so much harder.
It's almost a little bit of the CSM experience, right? Where if you have, I'm just going to choose like you have a partner A or whatever, and you're a account manager or a channel manager or whatever the kind of name is at your organization for the folks that manage the relationship with these partners. Right. And you know that this is a partner who could have a measurable impact to the bottom line. This is a partner that could either refer really large enterprise deals, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And you know that if you were able to deliver them not only your fantastic one-on-one, which you already can do, you can control that, but you were also able to give them enablement opportunities, and then you were able to give them marketing opportunities. What that partner is able to do is going to be more, right? Which of course is good for you and good for the company, good for everybody. But there is that kind of individual sense that folks are invested in the work that you're doing because it impacts the bottom line of the company in terms of actual dollars and cents and the relationships that individuals are able to build. So there's a lot more pressure, I think, when you get into partner enablement. And this is something I've heard from other folks at other companies, that one thing that's difficult for them is they come from customer education and then suddenly they're getting folks who are very sort of aggressively, this isn't necessarily my experience, but very aggressively coming in and saying like, I want this, I want that now, this needs to go now because we have this much money that needs to be earned in Q2. And that's not, I mean, you do get some of that in customer education, but it's definitely a different level, I think, of pressure. Potentially, unless you're doing a revenue generating program like a CERT program.
Right. That's difficult.
So I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting though, because then when you do something really exciting, it's these individual people who can come to you and say, wow, like this was really great, or this didn't work, or you get such granular feedback because they know the relationship so well.
Now,
so I think that's exciting.
Do you also get into, so you're talking about enabling these folks, and we're building a program. Now it's bigger and more nuanced and diverse. And we have different kinds of partners. Oh, I was trying to find my thread here. I just lost it. Certification, credentialing.
Yeah.
So now, as you're building a program, does that also come into the loop for the partners? Like, how do we actually prove? Here's the rub, April, that I had. I remember going back to early days when the first time I was working with partners, and I wasn't in any way like you. I was a customer education program that now had some kind of responsibility for this. And what had happened, and I've seen this in all kinds of contexts, so I'm going to very much generalize. We had an instance with a partner that wasn't performing. And now that was kind of on me, kind of, I say very loosely, because we didn't have a formal partner program where I was at, which kind of ended up, for me, that instance drug us into a whole discussion about, okay, now how do we certify? How do we prove? How do we validate? How do we really make sure that we did everything we could possibly do to make sure our partners have what they need? And where does that come into play, April? Do you think about that as well, and how to certify a partner, or is that
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is especially, you'll get that pressure, I think, earlier in programs if you have partners that are actually delivering services, SOWs.
okay?
Because there you also need to select a certain number of partners that are servicing those SOWs, and you need to have a way to make sure that those people are representing your brand because they're even more closely tied to the deal. But I think for me, when you think about, I came to Cloudinary, there's no partner enablement. And what I'm responsible for is the partner experience. So it's really, what is the partner's experience from the moment they touch us, through sign, through onboarding, through maturity. So that means that I'm responsible for the enablement and the training, but also for the platforms and the processes that would impact their experience. So that means, for example, how are they getting paid? How are they registering their deals?
Wait.
How are they?
Wait, now I have to pay these people?
I know, right?
Wait.
Right.
I want to pause on that. So, again, when I start thinking partners, I've naturally come from the angle of helping a partner learn how to be able to educate for us, or get them enabled to be able to do some basic things. But you're talking about this whole substrate layer, this whole foundation and framework that you have to build to make sure that these folks get paid, they get whatever they have. That's even more work.
Yeah, I mean, the people who oversee the program itself, right? The VPs of channel and of technology, these are the people that are developing the strategy and really owning the partner program. My piece is, what is the partner experience, right? What would that NPS be that isn't just about education and learning? It's about, what does it mean to be a partner with us? So that means for me, a lot of, some of the work I'm doing right now is around building a new platform and making sure that that platform is user friendly and that we're able to have the integrations that we want with it. And then it's also going to reflect our brand in terms of how we create a kind of beautiful, clean, modern experience for partners. So there's some, UX that's involved in this beyond just, what's the training that we're going to launch or what's the VILT. I also need to think about enablement is much broader. It's not just the product. It's also, how often are we going to give them product roadmap sessions? How often are we going to give them latest and greatest in terms of the future of our industry? How are we going to connect them with opportunities that they could engage in our community, that they could participate in our bug bounty program, participate in our developer specific experience programs, right? So you have to be this kind of hub where you think about what is the full experience of the partner. Okay,
I've got a question then for you about that hub. So it's sounding to me like, and I know where I'm leading you. I'm not, I'm taking you down this road intentionally. What does that hub look like? What is this, a tool stack, a technology, a software that I can buy off the shelf? Like, what is the experience? Because that's important, because I always get to that, like, I need some platform. I need something to help folks out. Is that my LMS? What are you talking about in this little space about like a technology to help?
I think it completely depends on the type of company you are, who your partner, what your partner ecosystem looks like, what your internal resources are, how much money you can devote to it. I mean, I think in the session last week, when you guys were talking, you were talking about a lot of tools. Like, here's all the different tools you would need.
Yeah.
And certainly if you are, a Salesforce or a very large company with a lot of money, absolutely, that is the tool set that you'd want to develop out. As a startup, it's you do everything on a shoestring, even if you're a successful company like Cloudinary. So I have to think, what is the, I mean, how it is. It's always what can you do on a shoestring, right? So for me, I have to think about what's that kind of base foundation, and what are the things that partners need to be able to do. So for us, they need to be able to access learning. They need to be able to register deals. They need to be able to co-brand materials or access some marketing abilities. They also need to be able to have a central place where they can check compliance against tier requirements. So that means there needs to be something within there that's a single dashboard that they can look at how much they've earned or the revenue against requirements as being part of our program. So there's a number of things that need to happen. So because of that, it can't just be an LMS. We can't just be like, here's your academy. It needs to be either the academy mixed with another tool, or it needs to be a single tool. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. And some programs will SSO between two different tools. Some programs will buy a single tool that has an LMS OEM'd into it. And then some will buy a straight up tool that is a full on homegrown PRM, which is we call a partner relationship manager tool. So there's a lot of different options in this area. And then within each of these, there's lots of different types, you can get that have different functionalities.
Wow. I mean, I've started to see some of these.
Jesse, I just saw Jesse Shipman write in comments, an ecosystem for ecosystems. Yes.
I mean, the more I see this, the more it blows my mind. And like, I'm trying to demystify this in a certain sense.
Yes.
What can you ascribe some names to those products? Like, do you have one at Cloudinary that, do you have a vendor that you work with to deliver this kind of experience?
Yeah. So when I came in, we had a vendor, but it wasn't working particularly well for us. And so part of my sort of, create the program was I did a very long process. I think it was like 3 months of vetting tools so that I could put together an appropriate tool set with the integrations that I wanted to be able to serve badging and certification. So PRMs themselves, because they're not true LMSs, are not super powerful in LMS. So you need to, it takes a lot to get a PRM that can actually serve the same functionality as, say, a skill jar, in terms of how you're actually treating the experience, the learning experience of the partner. So you go ahead.
I want to connect a couple dots here. So we're talking about a PRM and how you're setting that up. And you mentioned skill jar, which is what I'm trying to do, April, is like connect some of your experiences to the audience. And like what helped you from coming from customer ed, because you're at Slack, right? And you were in a what was your role at Slack?
My role was really to own the content side of the certification program that we were developing from zero.
Okay.
So for me, it was really around content strategy, the learning strategy, and I also had a lot of visibility into the program itself and how that was being created.
Now, I think that's really important, April, because so what I'm feeling from you is like just the way your mind is working as we're doing this out loud is that, so you've come in, you've got this background in academics, you understand pedagogy, learning theory, all that stuff. You've been in a certification program. And what I love about when you touch something like that, you start to think differently about human learning. So now I'm seeing you going into this space now where you're looking at a PRM, you're trying to build out, how do I take this job task analysis stuff? A partner needs to know this and do this. And now you're connecting the dots. Like, I don't know anything about PRMs.
Yes.
But the fact that you came in with the experience of using products like, I maybe used your Credible or Credly as a badging platform. And then SkillJar is definitely a leading LMS or a learning platform. And now you're in another level. So are you connecting back to SkillJar and back to Salesforce or HubSpot and back to all these things for this one portal? How does that all work?
Yeah, I think so. Just to give you a sense of what I try to align my career and my choices with some of my values. And so one thing that's important for me just personally, and this will be different for everyone, is I like working for companies and working with companies that are open ecosystem companies that are not intended to bring customers in and lock them into a single suite of tools and then either monetize their data or do other types of marketing against their data. So that's one reason why I was really attracted to Slack. I was at Dropbox before, and now I'm at another company that's really a single service that is meant to integrate openly with an ecosystem of best of breed enterprise tools. So when I came to the PRM space, I kind of had that same lens where I said, listen, I have this background in certification. I want to be able to use certification tools. So that means I want to use Credly or Credible for badging. I mean, at least, those are the two that are the most common. I need a item development and a secure provider for my exams when I do run exams, and then I'll need a proctoring tool on top of that.
Uh-huh.
At the same time, I need the ability for my LMS to open SCORM files. That's also something that is a huge impediment in the PRM space. Most of those do not support SCORM because they're sort of more basic, they're more basic LMSs. So I had a number of requirements. I needed open API. I needed someone that would work with me, that would be kind of open to integrating. I had 7 tools that I was asking for integrations with.
Wow.
Right. So it's a lot. And what I ended up doing is finding a small company. Their name's Rockwell. They're out in Australia, that have this really beautiful, powerful LMS within their own homegrown system. And they also have deal reg and marketing. But what made them unique was they're a small company that wants to personalize for you and are completely open to integrating, building API integration, some of them custom across all of these different tools, and creating an experience that works for exactly what I want, versus paying a lot of money for one of these top tools, something like Zift, which is going to provide a kind of out-of-box experience, but won't necessarily be able to work with you to build a custom collection of APIs the way that I wanted to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, you see me with like kind of okay, now I'm on information overload. Like and this is just me being transparent. I'm like, I like to talk out loud and work out loud, and there's things I don't know. That's exactly what we're doing. But now you're opening my mind. Like the talk with Bill was like, wow, okay, this is a big deal. And now it's like, okay, there's all these products that serve this space, and it's really opened my eyes.
There's a ton of products. And there's a lot of ways you can go, right? If you're a small program, you could choose, there's a number of PRM type tools, partner relationship manager tools, that are aimed at small startups, and they all do different things. Some of them focus a little bit more on social media, which is great, something like Impact. And then there's a number of these other tools that it just depends on what you're looking for in your program. For me, I knew that I wanted to be able to service certification, and I did not want to SSO to sorry, I just saw Jesse's comment over there. I had this like distraction moment for
well, we need to pause and answer questions here in a sec too.
Yeah. But anywho, I knew that I didn't want to SSO, because every partner ecosystem is different. If you're somewhere like Salesforce or you're at HubSpot, your partners have a huge motivation to learn with you. You are a money maker. They can put tons of implementation and services around you. So as a partner program and an enablement person, you have a little bit more leeway. If you're in a smaller program where there aren't as many services that you can layer on top, you need to be very mindful of the fact that your partners don't have a lot of motivation to engage with you. So that's also how you need to think about when you're doing platforms.
Fascinating. Motivation. It's still a plague. It still plagues us in this space too.
Right.
Can we get a win here? Everybody just wants to learn and do our stuff. No.
Well, there's brand awareness too. I mean, one thing that was great at Slack is we had a lot of brand awareness. And I was at Slack basically from the IPO or the direct listing through the Salesforce acquisition, which was really a moment of a lot of brand awareness for Slack. So that meant that partners were very excited about being associated with Slack. So there's a little bit more push you have with those partners, because they want, that is going to help their business, that association, brand awareness, and expertise.
Fascinating. Let me go back. I want to look through the comments here.
Yes. Yes.
Got more comments.
Hi, Jesse.
Okay, let's just a moment and then come back. Let's see. Well, I'm looking through. So you have Jesse and Buck. Hey, Buck. I don't know if we've said
I don't see Buck. Am I missing?
Yeah, he was early on there. Giovanni and Jesse. Okay, Jesse's comment was, there are a number of really great startups that are thinking about this concept of co-innovation and platforming with the purpose of building ecosystem programs better. Wow.
There's a ton of things happening. Oh my gosh, the PRM space is really innovating right now. I think there used to be a lot of very traditional PRMs, and this is a moment where you're really seeing a lot of, I don't want to use that word disruptors, but a lot of folks coming in and saying the traditional PRM is out. Here's the kind of new things we can do. There's people who are trying to build sort of marketplace type PRMs where a single PRM would sort of service out lots of different types of partners. There's a ton of really fantastic work being done. I do think as a partner enablement person, it does mean that you need to do more work when you intro into that platform space to figure out how to make sense of kind of what's happening in that field right now.
Yeah. I just have to ask this out of personal ignorance because I don't know. What are the major contenders, the platforms that you would see in the PRM space? Because I'm not aware of it. Like I know all the LMSs that fit customer education, but who are some of the brands? I don't want to leave people out, but just to pique our interest. Like,
okay. And also
Sorry,
folks who are here in comments, throw some of the ones that you guys
yeah,
have.
please do in comments. We have time. We have plenty of time.
Salesforce has a really popular PRM. Partner, I might be saying these names wrong because it's been a while since I talked to them. Partner, Zimpy, Zift, Partner Stack is one of these new programs that's kind of like hip. They offer a payment functionality that people really like, although there's some stuff with that. I think I also talked to Impact. I talked to, I can't remember all of the names of them. Of course, yeah. Well, Crossbeam isn't really a PRM though. Crossbeam is an account mapping tool. We also use Crossbeam, and that's one of the tools that we are integrating via API into our PRM. Partner Portal, Partner Stack I mentioned. Yes, thanks, Jesse. Partner Portal is also one of these smaller, there's a number of these smaller, I think like Partner Fleet too is I think another one, or I can't remember these names exactly. Partnered, yeah, there's a number of them that are kind of smaller in the space and really doing a very specific thing. But I feel like to me, it's very different from the LMS space for customer ed, because I think there it's really only like, you've got your top 3 or 4.
Yeah, I see 5 or 6 of the main contenders, but yeah, there's a very small niche offering, because customer education. I think it sounds like the PRM is kind of similar, but sorry, there's more integrations in those platforms. Is that accurate, or are some of them pretty bare bones?
So some of them have Allbound. That's another one. Some of them have what they call closed APIs. And what that means is you can't actually integrate with them if they don't have a pre-built connector unless they put it on their product roadmap. So that's what a lot of the PRMs are, which makes it difficult if you want to do kind of custom API work with them. Which, makes sense. They don't want, that's a security risk to have all of these different API connections coming in from X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, you got to manage that and keep it updated. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Right. But each of them have a different sort of focus, right? Some of them are like, okay, we're really focused on enablement. And like Jessie, for example, I think she's starting one, Partner Fluent, I think she put in there. And then some of them are really, again, focused on the media component. Some of them are more focused on the business side, where they're more about payments and being able to track payments and commissions. So what you really need to do is sit down with your program and sit down with your partners. I did a lot of work talking to our partners, talking to everyone, and really understanding, we're a small program. What do we need to do? What is the things that we need to do right now that are the most important? Because ultimately you want to do all of these things, but you can't. You need to focus on what are the key things that you can do within this year and next year, and then what platform is best going to serve those.
Okay, I just had a thought. You're like, oh God, Dave. No, like it's fun to explore this space because it's like I've found a new world, but it's very similar. So when, oh gosh, what was I trying to say? Okay, so going back to each one of these types of PRM, I like the fact that you're actually sitting down with your partners, because I'll go back in time, and the thing that I'm trying to connect here is this experience, like evoke this experience of me as an individual in a startup company, stumbling into the partner space, and all of a sudden going, oh, I need to solve for this problem, which is I have to enable partners at scale. So did you, and that one of the first groups of people that I stumbled upon and started working with were like these big box consulting firms like Deloitte, like Accenture. And they were really interesting because they brought with them this kind of an understanding of how to work with companies like us. where we were just starting out building this partner program. So are you saying like you didn't have to know everything? You opened a dialogue with the partners who actually helped you to orchestrate or develop your own program too, because you had a good relationship with them. Is that something that happened?
Well, I think what I did, and I would encourage anyone to do, is that when they enter a new program is to get a representative sample of your partners and actually sit down and talk to them without their account reps present, just deeply about what do they need? What are their problems? What could make them, I mean, I had a list of questions that I worked through with them, but what could we do that would make them want to work with us more? And so it isn't necessarily like, do you like this thing or do you like that thing? Because again, and we all know this, we're all in enablement. Technology is always in service to learning. Learning is not in service to technology in terms of platforms and tools.
Yeah, sadly, it's true.
It is much more important what we do than what platform we choose. In terms of actually how we enable. I think sometimes in SaaS, people get really like, I'm going to do the newest flashy thing and this, and that. And it's like, no, it doesn't, I mean, it may sound cool. It's going to sound cool, but it doesn't actually have measurable impact, right? Which is what we care about. But, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm there too, because we've talked about so much.
Yeah. Well, with the conversations with the partners. So I think it's really important because you need to be focusing on what the partners need. You also need to have deep conversations with your directors, your actual account owners, because those are the people that have had years of experience working with partners. They are going to be 100 times more knowledgeable than you about the program. And so their input is going to be really helpful because they've tried things, right? Account directors, especially if you come into a program with no enablement like mine, they were doing the enablement. Any kind of enablement would go through them. So they do have some input and really sitting down and understanding, what do you think is going to work for your partner? And then cross-checking that against what partners themselves are saying will help you. So for me, for example, one just as like a note, what I got out of those meetings is, when some people come into the partner program, what partners are telling them they need is advanced technical training, or they need implementation training. So what our partners told me they needed overwhelmingly was sales enablement. They were like, you know what, we're developers, we can freaking figure out the tech stuff. we don't understand how to position your product, or we would like more information on how to position your product. And so that has completely informed my curriculum. My curriculum is beginning with sales foundations and providing that to partners as a badge. And then we move into the more technical training after that, but I'm focusing entirely on sales enablement initially.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating to me because it's almost like a multiplier. Like as we're learning about the education space in software, you're seeing, and this is what blows my mind, is that we have all these little like kinds of education, which I think are just really neat. Like you start off with maybe like I usually have come into a company at the time where at the same moment you have a customer education program and you have a sales enablement program. Like that's kind of early. Those are the first couple that appear, and you have documentation, and then things start to change. And this is one of the things that's really weird for startups, because we have to work across the board with these other partners who are doing this too. But this partner space has become a lot more complicated. And I think it hits people like a truck. Going back to the story I had, we didn't have a partner program where I was at, and I couldn't do it all. So I think a mistake I made, and this is why I'm really thankful for having you on here and talking about this at depth. A mistake I made was to think about partners just from a technical lens. I didn't even think about the sales enablement. Gosh, I mean, if you don't know how to sell, and it's strange because I'm working with partners pretty frequently, and Service Rocket is a services company that does partnerships. We're doing all this stuff, so I'm learning that as well because I'm relatively new at Service Rocket. What do I want to say there? I'm like, I just wanted to double down on the fact that I think as you start learning about this whole space, there's so much more at stake. And just like you said before, and I want to bring attention to this again, You're saying go talk to the people. I'm building a program, find out what they need, and it's okay. And the reason why I'm saying all this, April, is because I think it's just so easy for some of us to go, oh, I'm going to solve this problem this way, when you really just go talk to people.
Yeah, I think it does take some extra work though, because you do need to have those partners agree to meet with you, and having like a half an hour out of their time to talk to you about enablement is probably not like, yay. But you know, it was very critical for me, because how else am I going to know what they need? Yeah. Basically, what I did next is I created a big blueprint of all of the skills that a mature partner with us would need. And I did this based on kind of, you think about a certification blueprint, really thinking curriculum wise, the full blueprint. And I validated this across all the kind of experts across the company. But that doesn't mean that every single one of those outcomes I focus on first or I focus on equally, right? You can take a look at those outcomes and then say, which of these are the ones that the partners need most right now? And then kind of work and build a curriculum out of that. But we'll see, you know, right. I mean, but you know, things flex and change. We're in a startup, right? And I think every startup is different. For us, for example, we have, we're between sales enablement, between having support for sales enablement. So currently we don't have any sales enablement support. So that means that when we're building sales enablement, our program is building it. We're not borrowing it. So that's
a lot of extra work for you.
Right. Yeah. So we're building, like, you know, from scratch, and then applying that partner lens to it.
Wow. You got a lot of work to do, April. How far is your program along in building it?
Every team does, though, right? I mean, this is not unique, and I'm not like, so we are just getting the PRM platformed and implemented, and we are doing our first badge, which will be our sales enablement, kind of sales foundation badge for partners. Yeah. That will target our partners that have some referral, reseller, or go-to-market type motions with us around selling. And that all should be, we're all targeting end of April, beginning of May for a relaunch of the program. So it's exciting, but it's in that moment of like a lot going on.
Well, you like the chaos, April.
I like the challenge. I like to do things. I like to experiment. I'm totally fine with doing things wrong. And, you know, there's components of what I'm launching that honestly, I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see if this resonates, right? I did the best I could with trying to understand where we go, but you never know. So we'll see.
I love that. I'm going to ask the audience if there's any more questions. Please chime in right now. We've got just a minute here. And before we go out, before we leave, I just want to kind of wrap up a little bit and make sure. Okay, here's one. Giovanni says, thanks for the conversation. Okay, he's going to another meeting. He just says, my best. It's great to have your supporters and your fan base out there, April. Before we go, anything else you want to say that's like really impactful, like you want to leave people with a note about building a partner program before we head off for the day?
I would just say partner programs are super fun, and just make sure to think of them as a different beast, right? So you apply new rules when you come to partners.
New rules. Got it. Oh my gosh. April, this has been, well, I had no doubt because we've talked, but this has been really helpful. And now with between 2 sessions, an hour each, learning about partner enablement, this is a fascinating new world for me. But if folks want to reach out to you, you're just April Trask on LinkedIn. Are you on Twitter or any other Instagram, other social?
I mean, my Instagram is all motorcycle videos. You don't want to see that. So I think go to my LinkedIn. April
Are you a
Trask.
motorcycle enthusiast? We're gonna put you on the spot. Let's see. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. If any of you have more questions, remember, if you're time traveling and you're watching this video in the future, ask your questions right in the chat. Reach out to April directly. She's our resident expert on partner enablement, and we're glad to have her today. So get out there and I'll use my quote from C-Lab, educate. What do I say? I don't have my script in front of me. But thanks for working out loud with us today. April, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Anything else you want to say on parting?
No, thank you so much. It's been really fun. Appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
It's always fun. Well, let's keep in touch. I want to see how your program continues to develop, and I have to check out her program at Cloudinary. And that's it for the day. Happy Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.